What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast episode. My name is Sam Thrash, and I'm your show host over here at Fall Obsession Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This week, we have a new guest to our show, first time on the podcast. His name is Braden Funderburg, fellow firefighter that I know down here in Texas, and he comes on the show to share his story and experience from last year's Arizona bear and mountain lion hunt that he went on with his dad. Absolutely crazy story, and it involves him getting up close and personal in kind of a self-defense attack mode scenario with this bear that he shot, as the title of the episode alludes to. So I hope you guys enjoy this story. It is an absolutely incredible, once-in-a-lifetime type story, this kind of stuff that you can't make up. So hope you guys enjoy the show this week. But before we get to that, I got to hit a few things real quick. The first thing being Hoot Camo is a podcast partner over here at Fall Obsession. The guys over at Hoot are very passionate and very driven about building a brand and building high-quality camo gear in the outdoor industry that is on par with the industry leaders, but at a price point that blue-collar guys and girls like you guys and me can all afford. I know that's in today's world, that's always a concern, is being able to get into good gear for a good price, and Hoot makes that possible. If you guys go to their website, you'll see their prices and see that it's a lot easier to get into a full camo set, and I'll vouch for the quality of not just the gear but the pattern, also the functionality of it. I've worn Hoot gear this year in Texas and Colorado in multiple different environments, anywhere from flatland plains to Texas hardwoods, sitting up in a tree, and the gear has just done phenomenal for me. So go check out Hoot Camo if you haven't already. Follow them on social media, and whether you're going to put in an order for gear or just go get a hat or some everyday wear, which they have, if you guys use the code FallObsession15 at checkout, that'll save you guys some money. So Hoot Camo, go check them out. Our other podcast partner is Ridge Rock Hunt Company. Derek and Lacey over there in Mississippi, they book hunts with vetted outfitters across the country. They have a large network of outfits that Derek knows and trusts himself. He wouldn't have anybody in his network if he wouldn't hunt with them himself. And he values putting people in touch with the right people, the right outfitter, to get everything going for you. So if you're looking to book that next hunt, that once-in-a-lifetime hunt, next adventure, change it up, whatever it might be, give Derek a call. He'll work with you on all the details and find something that works for you. Ridge Rock Hunt Company, go check them out. Finally, the Outdoor Call radio app is also a partner of our podcast. Outdoors Dan from Respect the Game TV, he has created an app that you can download on any device where you can stream hunting shows and podcasts on a loop every single day of the week. You'll catch Fall Obsession Podcast on there, playing on that loop on Mondays, the same day as our new publications, as well as tons of other hunting shows and podcasts that we all know and love. So go download the Outdoor Call radio app today. It is free. You can start listening instantly. And go follow Outdoors Dan on social media. He does a couple of live broadcasts every week at local Midwest radio stations. And even if you're not local to one of those stations, you can still catch those live broadcasts that he shares on his Facebook Live. So the Outdoor Call radio app, go download it and go follow Outdoors Dan. Last but not least, we always appreciate you guys supporting Fall Obsession. So whatever platform you're listening or watching this podcast on, be sure you subscribe. We put out weekly new episodes of our Fall Obsession podcast. You can also catch multiple other shows that we have on Carbon TV, and be sure you're following us on social media as well. You can also go to our website, fallobsession.com, to catch all of our content on there. And be sure that you hit the store up, pick you up a hat or a shirt or something like that, support a small town hunting brand. And if you're interested in promoting your own hunting or outdoor organization on this podcast, you can reach me at fallobsession.com/podcast. There's a form on there you guys can fill out. We'll talk about details if you're interested in joining our partner network. So be sure you guys are following and supporting Fall Obsession. We always appreciate you doing so. All right, that's all from me right now. We are heading over to our conversation with Braden. You guys are listening to another Fall Obsession podcast.
Oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Fall Obsession Podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode. My name is Sam, I'm your host, and I am joined this week by a new guest on our show, a fellow Texan, a fellow firefighter, Mr. Braden Funderburg. Welcome to Fall Obsession Podcast, man.
Awesome, glad to be here.
Happy to have you, man. We have a really awesome and crazy experience that I'm looking forward to having you share with us today on our show. But as I just mentioned, this is your first time podcasting with us. Might be your first time podcasting, I guess, in general.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself, just where you're from, and kind of your experience growing up as a hunter.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, Braden Funderburg up here in North Texas, live in the Aubrey area. Like Sam said, full-time fireman, but avid outdoorsman. I've grown up in the outdoors my whole life. My dad started taking me out at a very young age. Been actively hunting since I was about 4 or 5 years old, so over 20 years now. Got into bow hunting probably 10 or 15 years ago. That really spurred my hunting interest even more. And then probably about 10 years ago or so, me and my dad kind of decided we wanted to do more than just the Texas whitetail hunting. So we ventured off into the big game hunting. Been on a few trips here and there, go around to the big shows, Texas Trophy Hunters, Dallas Safari Club stuff. We try to pick out a big game hunt we're going to go on every other year, something like that. So we've been doing that now for roughly about 10 years and try to be in the outdoors every chance I get.
That's awesome, man. So 10 years of trying to, do something outside of the normal everyday grind, if you will. Over the 10 years, what are some of the highlighted hunts that you guys have had the opportunity to go on?
So it started off, he went by himself to New Brunswick on a black bear hunt. Had a great time with it. Wasn't successful. We came back. I kind of got into the realm of it. So I've been to Manitoba twice, black bear hunting up there. I've killed 2 good bears with my bow up there. We've gone to Wisconsin. That was whitetail hunting, but just kind of getting out of the realm of the Texas whitetail. And then still actively putting in for points and trying to get out west, antelope, mule deer, elk, those kind of things. Obviously with trying to draw in some of these non-resident states, a little more difficult. So I've been pocketing my points here for a while. So I'm hoping next year or two I really start cashing in on some of those.
Awesome. What's on the horizon? What are you hoping to cash in on?
So I've got mule deer and elk that I've put in for. I'll take either one of them. I've never killed either one. I think they'd both be a blast. Now, our biggest horizon hunt, I guess, is we did book 2 years from now. We're going to New Zealand on a red stag and fallow hunt. So that'll be
awesome.
Something to look forward to. But as far as in the States, elk, mule deer, we'll get into it more in the podcast. I'm going to have to go get me a mountain lion now since we shot a mountain lion on this trip that we were on, but have to close that door for it.
Yeah. So let's kind of set the stage for this particular experience that we want to talk about today, because like you mentioned, you like to do stuff outside of Texas, some other types of hunts. So this was last year, 2023, and what was the hunt that you guys were going on?
Yeah, so we went to Central Arizona, went with an outfitter, Diamond Outfitters, and we booked it as a combination black bear and mountain lion hunt behind dogs. So they've got 2 of probably, I would say, some of the best houndsmen that I've witnessed. I mean, I've seen videos of houndsmen and stuff like that, but 2 top-notch guides hunting behind a pack of 8 dogs per person, ranging from horseback or UTV through the backcountry of Arizona. And target was black bear and mountain lion. And it wasn't really a guarantee, if you're super lucky, maybe you get both or one or the other. But it was a 5-day hunt. We kind of had like a little spike camp set up, a little cowboy camp that we were staying in. So it was a good trip.
How far back were you?
So I think when we turned off the blacktop, we drove a mountain road for about an hour and a half. I think 23 miles back some on a mountain road, and then we were actually staying. They had worked out some deal with a private landowner that he had like an old cowboy camp way at the back of his place that they had permission to be on. We didn't hunt on it, but we actually stayed on that cowboy camp back there. So we were 23 miles off the blacktop, probably to your nearest town, 30 miles. Closest town we were to was Baghdad, Arizona. If you either go back to Baghdad or go the other way, and then the next closest town was Prescott. But it was a good 2 hours from town. Quite a few hunters back up in there. I think cow elk season was going on. They had a youth mule deer hunt going on. So there was people back there, but no cell service for a long time. And we were way back in there.
Yeah. So was this like as you're getting there, as you're trekking back and everything, is this kind of meeting your expectations, or was it different than what you thought it would be before you went?
A little bit of both. So when we went to Canada bear hunting, we're talking 150 foot pine trees and, just real big forest. And so I'm thinking the whole way we're getting in there, like, if we're hunting with dogs and they're talking about these things being treed, I'm expecting to see some pretty large trees. And for about the first 10 miles, I think the tallest thing I saw was a mesquite tree. I was like, man, this is going to be pretty wild if we're going to tree a bear in an 8-foot tree. Like, we're going to be looking eye to eye with him treed. So we got a little bit farther in there and it started to get a little more dense. And then we finally got to a point where I could start seeing some mountains. We were kind of in like a rolling hill. We came through one mountain range, got into a valley, and then, we drove for another 5 or 10 miles. I was like, man, I hate to say it, but I don't see there being any bears or lions back in here. And then we got a little deeper, and then it kind of dropped off, and then you started getting to the mountains. I was like, okay, this is a lot more rugged country. I could see this being where these animals hang out.
Yeah.
So it started really looking like really good country to be hunting in.
Gotcha. Was this your first time hunting behind dogs?
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
So what did the guides or anybody else do to kind of prep you guys for that kind of experience of hunting behind dogs?
So talking to them beforehand, we were kind of going with the idea. They kind of pitched it as, you can do spot and stalk or whatever, and you're going to be taking 400 or 500 yard shots, and you're going to be doing a lot of sitting and a lot of glassing on the mountains. And it just wasn't something that interests me or my dad, both of us. And they're like, if you want them like a really exhilarating hunt, you got to hunt behind dogs. And so I've seen people run dogs, in Texas for, bobcats or coons or stuff like that. And it's just, you turn them loose on something, they go tree it, whatever. So that's kind of what my expectation was. But watching these dogs work and kind of how it plays out, it was a whole nother level. But when they meant that it's the most exhilarating hunt that you'll be on and the most adrenaline rushed, for sure, that's what it is.
Awesome. So y'all set up camp, you said about 23 miles back. Am I sizing it up correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
So how does a hunt like this begin? Because obviously you have, I'm guessing, a full day, if not more, to trek everything back in there and get all set up. But then once you're in camp and everything, how does a hunt begin when you're hunting behind dogs like this?
Yeah, so we actually the guides dropped us a pin to the location, and they specifically were like, hey, before you leave the blacktop, like, make sure you've got the pin pulled up and the map pulled up, because you're going to lose service. So you need to know where that pin's at before you head off down this road. So they had got there probably noon, 1 o'clock on the day we were getting there. Had kind of had the camp set up and then got their dogs in, stuff like that. And then so we get into camp. They've already got the dogs kind of tied up in different places. They've got them all separated. So the first night was just kind of going over the game plan for the next day. And then, so in the mornings, so back up a little bit, we went 1st of October. So weather in Arizona, 1st of October, the mornings were probably high 30s, low 40s, low to mid 40s, but the highs were getting up to, mid 60s or 70s during the day, which isn't terrible. But for the dogs, as much as they're running and stuff like that, they do most of their hunting in the morning, because once it gets over about 65, 70, if them dogs get on a track and start running, they just get overheated too fast.
Yeah.
And so they don't do a whole lot of all day hunting. It's a lot of, if you haven't cut something by, 10:30, they're probably going to start wrapping up. You hunt until about noon or 1 o'clock. But they had all the dogs laid out. So I think all in total, there was 28 dogs, something
wow.
like that total. So there was 3 of us in camp. Me, my dad, and Captain Bruce, old Jody Bruce was with us.
Yeah.
So we each had our own guide, which had their sets of dogs, and they rotate their dogs out, day to day, give them some rest. So I think there was like 28 dogs total, maybe a little more. Don't know the specifics, but so we got settled in camp, and then it was kind of next morning, get ready. I think we rolled out of camp at 5 a.m. So 2 of us were hunting on UTV with 8 dogs apiece, and then one guy went off horseback with another 8 dogs. And from where camp was, it was probably another 30 or 40 minutes till we even dropped the dogs out of the box to where we were actually hunting.
Oh, wow.
So it was probably another good 10, 15 miles from camp that we were riding on the UTVs to get back to the mountains, the couple mountains we were going to start running the dogs at.
Wow. That's far back there, man. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So how fast was it before you guys actually started seeing, bears or lions that you guys are after? And I guess my question is, were there any unsuccessful hunts before the one that we're here to talk about today?
Yeah, so for me, not really. So I got on my bear on day 1.
Okay.
And I had a whole different kind of idea on how this was going to work. Like, I just thought it was like, oh, you turn the dogs out, they start running around, like, but there's bears and lions everywhere, which isn't the case. So with driving these mountain roads with the UTVs, the dogs can pick up a bear scent if he's walked in the area within the last 6 to 12 hours, within 200 or 300 yards of the UTV.
Okay.
So if they alert on something like that, they'll get out and, hopefully one dog gets on the track, and then they go, and then the guide will get out and try to make sure they're going the right direction of the track, or make sure they're not backtracking it. But a lion, the dogs can't really smell a lion from the UTV. That's more of, you have to actually see the track, and then he put the dogs on it. And the way they explained it to us is, a bear is like a trash truck. It just stinks, and the dogs can really understand it. A lion's like one single bag of trash.
Okay.
So, which was I had no idea how that worked.
Yeah.
So we were driving. So for me, I just was the first probably hour or so, we're just like driving around, and I'm like kind of like wondering, like, I don't really know, like, what are we doing? Like, I thought that the dogs are just still on the UTV. And then he explained the whole process. Like, yeah, we'll just run around. And I'm kind of just waiting for the dogs to start alerting for something. Obviously, he's watching tracks crossing these roads that we're on. But if he doesn't see anything crossing, it's just kind of a trail ride until the dogs pick something up. But I was successful on the first day. My dad and them, they actually came across a pretty fresh mule deer kill on his.
Yeah.
So they kind of did some stuff, tried to find some tracks. They found a real old track, so they actually covered it back up and kept coming back each day to check it, waiting for that lion to come back to it. And that's how he ended up being successful.
I was going to ask from the lion standpoint later on, but since you brought it up, if there were any scenarios like that where you were hunting over a carcass or that kind of thing, because I've always heard that's a pretty, I won't say, super reliable way, but it's a more consistent way that you have a better shot at killing a mountain lion, from my understanding.
Yeah,
at
for
least,
sure.
having not done it.
Yeah, and once they kind of said that on the kill, that's where they were successful. Now, it took 3 or 4 days for it to come to fruition with it, because I guess they say those lions, they'll get on a track and they make a big circle through those mountains. So when they come through one area, it may be 4, 5, 6 days before they actually make it back to that area.
Wow.
So you just kind of have to catch it at the right time. But yeah, and then we cut a few small tracks throughout the week after I had killed, because at that point we were kind of working together. The two guys that were on UTVs, it was like, hey, if we caught a track, we'd call the other ones like, hey, dogs are on something, y'all come over here. And that's kind of what happened with us when we got on my bear, called the other guide, and they ended up coming over to kind of assist also.
Gotcha.
But
So let's dive into yours a little bit. So you're getting the feel for kind of how all this works on the first day, and I guess y'all turned the dogs loose at one point, and they caught the scent, and y'all were off from there. How did it all begin?
Yeah, so we'd probably been driving already for 2.5 hours. We'd been up a bunch of roads, rough country, almost to the point where I was getting tired of getting beat around on this UTV. Dogs really hadn't hit on a whole lot. We hadn't really seen much cutting across the roads. But what they'll do those early mornings too, they'll go find those mountain lakes and they'll just kind of go walk around them, see if any bears come, find some tracks coming to water. So we went to this one lake kind of way back, let the dogs out. Guide actually walked all the way around the lake pond. I guess they call them lakes. I'd call them a pond in Texas.
Yeah.
But he walked all the way around, didn't really see anything. The dogs were getting a drink of water, just kind of running around. And then one dog opened up on a scent, and they all kind of came through. And next thing you know, they're all kind of lined out, and they're 200-300 yards in a line. He's like, well, they must be on something. So we backtracked the pond, lake, whatever they call it. And he's like, man, I guess I didn't see any of these. And there were some pretty good bear tracks, pretty fresh in the deal. He goes, they must be on that. And so at that point, they're all running GPS collar and all that kind of stuff. And so we, at that point, all the dogs are off. You can hear them, sounding off and barking and everything. And we're just kind of sitting in the UTV, letting them kind of do their thing. And we probably sat for 30, 45 minutes, watched them on the GPS. And by this point, they're like a mile and a half from us. I mean, it wasn't long, and they're way, way gone, a mountain over.
Wow.
So, and he can see, I mean, it's telling him how many barks per minute that they're doing. And then, once they get stationary and really start barking, it'll tell them if they're treed or not. So they're going out. And then it probably was about an hour that the dogs were running, and we were just kind of sitting back. And then we'd move and kind of get a little closer to the dogs. And then they all started showing treed. So then he's like, all right, I think they got him. So we drive the UTV around to the closest spot we could get on road before we hike in. And so we get parked, and I think we were like, as the crow flies, 900 yards from the dogs. Well, 900 yards is like up and over one mountain and then back up the next mountain.
Okay.
So we get out and we start going, and then the dogs start moving again. He's like, well, hold on. They're moving again, whatever. And then they moved maybe another 100 yards, and then they treat again. He's like, so to kind of lay the scene for the area, there still wasn't any really big trees. We're talking the tallest tree here is like 20 or 30 feet. And he's like, well, this country's real rocky, whatever. He goes, more than likely, I bet they've got them caught in a cave. He's like, that's pretty common, 50-50 shot on if they're going to be treed or if they'll be in a cave. He goes, just the way the dogs are acting and kind of where they're at. He goes, I bet this bear's in a cave. So we take off. We're still 800-900 yards from them. And we're on like a running hike. Because these dudes, I mean, they don't want their dogs to get in a bad situation. So they're trying to get to the dogs pretty quick.
Yeah.
So we'd go up there. He leaves his backpack. He doesn't take his backpack. I bring my gun, and I've got my backpack. And that's all we take with us. So we're hiking up this mountain. And we're going and going. And we finally get over the one. And then he's using his binoculars. And he can see up on the other one. He's like, yeah, they've got them caught. Or they're at the opening of a cave. I can see the cave, and I can see the dogs barking. So we're not far from them, but it's like 100 yards vertical that we've got to go. So we start hoofing it up the top of this mountain. By the time we get up there, like both of us are just like, all right, let's just take a break for a minute. The dogs are just at the front of this cave. Like, I got to catch my breath. The air's thin, and we've just done a 900-yard and gained 500 feet elevation in 15 minutes. Like, I'm not even in the hunting mood right now. I got to catch my breath.
Yeah.
So we get up there, and all the dogs are, they're just right at the opening to this cave, and they're just getting after it. You can't even see in the cave. And it's like you walk up. There's not like a nice long path to it. Like, you just kind of walk up and boom, it's right there. And it's pretty steep. So we get up there, and he's like, well, he already called the other guide, which it was the other guide, my dad, and they were on their way over. But I think they were like 45 minutes away. So we're kind of just sitting there letting the dogs do their thing, looking in there. Like, you can see the like hide of the bear, like kind of at the opening to the cave, but that's really all you can see. Obviously the dogs are in the way. But this cave opening's maybe 2 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Like, it's not super big.
Yeah.
So finally he starts trying to call the dogs back a little bit, just get them calmed down. And we kind of get the dogs back. He didn't bring any leashes. So he's like, well, I forgot the leashes to tie him up. So I'll just get them all called back. So we're sitting there, and it kind of got the dogs chilled out. And we can see the bear, and he's laid across the opening of the cave. And he's just kind of chilling there. And we're trying to look at anatomy and all this stuff. He asks, if I get these dogs pulled back enough, he's like, are you comfortable, making a shot right here? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm trying to find landmarks or whatever. And he said, all right, if you look real quick, he's laying across, and he's got like his front paw like tucked up behind his back shoulder. He's like, you see that white spot? And I was like, yeah, I can see it. He goes, all right. He goes, look at it. He goes, that's his front paw, like the pad of his paw. He goes, basically just go right over that. You'll be right behind the shoulder.
And
it's like, okay, I can see that.
Remind me, you may have already said it. Physically, how far away from the bear are you right now?
Maybe 10 or 12 feet.
Okay, so you're right freaking there. Okay.
Yeah, we're at the entrance to the cave.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
It's not far. Which, so I've got a lever action rifle that I'm shooting, and I had open sights, but coming to the hunt, they're like, you may shoot 20 or 30 yards. So I put like a little holographic red dot on it. Well, a holographic red dot does you no good under 15 feet. So I'm looking, and I'm like, well, I already know, like, this sight's about an inch higher than the barrel, and we're talking 10 feet of a shot. So I'll go just right above his front paw with this red dot, and that should put me, either right at the front paw or just right above it. So he gets the dogs called back, and I take that shot, and the bear gets to moving in there, and the dogs all take off at the cave, and he's yelling at the dogs, and the bear's somewhere in the cave. And like a couple dogs go into the cave, and they're all just barking and getting after it. And he finally gets all the dogs called back, and we can't see the bear anywhere. So we're like, all right, we'll just give it some time, and then we'll figure out how to get him out. We'll go in, tie a rope to him, drag him out, whatever. He's like, you think you make a good shot? I was like, man, I'm like positive I hit right above that front paw. I was like, I'm pretty sure we're a good shot. He's like, all right, cool. He goes, so we get the dogs called back. I think in that whole deal, like, one of the dogs got clawed, like it's bleeding a little bit on it, kind of like it's on its breast area, and another one kind of like got bit on the back leg, so it's got like a little puncture mark. But for those dogs, nothing really abnormal for them. They're just they've got a big heart and no brain.
Yeah, and they're scrappy. Like they live for that. So
yeah. So we're sitting there, and like the dogs have kind of chilled out, and about every 2 or 3 minutes, you just hear this bear moaning and chomping his teeth. And we're like, man, like 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, 15 minutes go by, and he's still making noise. Man, like, why is this thing not dead yet? Like, that's a good shot. Like, I know it's a good shot. He's like, man, sometimes maybe it just takes a minute. He's like, so we're sitting there. Still, we're probably 30 or 40 minutes in now, and he's still making noise. So now we're coming up with this game plan. Like, well, how are we going to get another shot on this bear? Well, both of us thought that from the cave that he went left. Like, we both thought that when I shot, he like went back to the left in the cave, and we thought the right was pretty much didn't go right. So the other guy and my dad finally get up there. Of course, they did bring the leashes and another pack, but like I'm still the only one who has a gun. Nobody else running. There's like no guns. Nobody has a pistol on him. Nothing. So the guide's like laying, like he's like sticking his head in, like with a flashlight, trying to look. He's got his phone filming because he's trying to see blood and all this other stuff. He's like laying, looking left. And next thing you know, he goes, oh, there he is. He goes, he's not left. He's on the right. So he'd been laying in there, like hugging the right side, looking left, and then ends up hearing him on his right. So he gets laid in there, like, I don't know, he's probably waist deep in this cave looking. He's filming and he sees him. So I've actually got a video. And I think I may have shown you before once of the bear in there, and all you can see is his head, and he's just kind of moving back and forth. He's got blood coming out of his nose. He's like, man, you got to be in the lungs somewhere. We got blood coming out of the nose. He's just fighting it. Like, you can tell he's got labored breathing. He's not breathing real well, but he's still just fighting this wound. So now we're in the idea of, well, how are we going to get him out to shoot him again because there just wasn't a good shot from where he was in the cave. And it's a real big bear. And like, man, I don't want you shooting him in the face because it's not going to be good. And you're not, with no light and everything, you're just going to have a real hard time. Like, we got to get him out somehow. So, and they've done this before. They're like, one of the guys, he's over there trying to find like a long twig to like start poking this bear to get him to come out of the deal. Well, the other guy's throwing rocks and they're just trying to see if he can get him to move. If nothing else, just get him moved in the cave to where we can get another shot.
Yeah.
So they took all their good dogs. So like their older, real good dogs. They tied them up. They left some of the young, dumb, still need to learn dogs just kind of running loose. But they had them back. Well, that one guy, he's kind of down maybe 10 or 15 feet down the mountain looking for a long stick. And then the one guy, he's throwing rocks. Then my dad's up there. So the way this cave is, there's like a cave opening, and then it's kind of like rock out, and then it has like a little like flat piece. And that's what I was using as my like safety net. Like if things go bad, I'll just tuck in behind this rock face.
Yeah.
And, let this bear run through. And that was kind of our plan all along. Like the path comes out of the cave, goes straight down the mountain. So if we have to, we'll just duck behind the little rock piece. Hindsight, I should have been above the cave, but that's hindsight, it always looks better after when you think about it.
Oh yeah.
So the guide's in there throwing rocks. And then finally he goes, oh, here he comes. Get ready. So he like jumps up and runs down the mountain, like 10 or 15 feet. So I step out from where I was kind of behind that rock face to be now looking at the cave. And sure enough, I see head, and here he starts coming out. So now me and this bear are face to face. He's stopped at the entrance of the cave. I'm stopped in the path down the mountain. And I'm 8-10 feet from him. And I'm like, he comes out just bare enough to where I can see his front shoulders and his head. And that's all. And he stops. And he kind of turns his head to the right. So I aim and go right in front of the front. He's basically quartering to me. I go right in front of the front shoulder, right in the neck, and I shoot. And this bear doesn't flinch. It didn't move, nothing. So like as soon as I shoot, I'm already like dipping back to try to get behind my little rock face cover. And I shoot, and he didn't flinch, nothing. And he immediately just like turns, and it was just like a dead run straight at us. So I'm like trying to get back in this, like my little safety corner, but my dad's in the way, and I can't squeeze him back far enough in there. So I'm like kind of sticking out. Well, he's like running straight at me. So I rack another shell real quick, and I shoot him again, and it's kind of like right in the side, like almost coming behind the front shoulder in front of the back leg. That's all I could see. And I think when I shot him, the barrel of the gun may have been touching him.
Oh my gosh.
But when I do that, he tumbles. So I'm like, all right, he's done. Like he tumbled, he's done. Well, when he tumbles and like onto me, like onto my legs, whatever. And I guess in that process of tumbling, he reaches around and grabs a hold of me. And I didn't even notice it until I'm getting like trying to not fall down the mountain. And I look down at my leg, and he's like locked on just below my knee. And like I hadn't felt it or nothing yet. But then that whole like, when they say you feel it once your eyes recognize it, that's a true thing. Because that's when I realized like, shit, this hurts. And it's not like a bite and like let go. It's like he's latched on, and his momentum's taking him down the mountain. And I'm thinking like, well, I could shoot him again, but if I shoot, like I can't see the lower half of my leg, and I know it's underneath him and my foot. Like I'm afraid I'm going to shoot my own leg or shoot my foot. My dad's behind me jabbing him with a trekking pole. And somehow in this process that only lasted like maybe 5 seconds, I guess his momentum was going fast enough down the hill that his mouth actually slid off. So I got like a V pattern on my leg from his teeth where they just kind of slid off, and he like lost a grip. And here he goes tumbling down the mountain. So at this point, I'm like, this hurts really bad. But I'm like, all right, thankfully, like he's rolling down the mountain. I've seen this on shows 1,000 times. Like he rolls at the bottom of the mountain. It's less work. And we'll be good to go once we get down there. Well, the other guide and the dogs that were loose, obviously the loose dogs take off after him. The other guide starts running down the mountain with the dogs, trying to keep an eye on him. I'm trying to pull my pant leg up, expecting to just see destruction. And to my surprise, I pull my pants up at first. I'm like, all right, there's no blood. Like, that's got to be good. And I look, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't see any, like, super deep penetration anywhere. Like, I don't see any holes. So now I'm going to, like, field paramedicine. Like, I'm feeling like, well, everything still feels, like, hard. Like,
Yeah.
the bones still feel intact. They're like, are you good? And I'm like, well, just give me a minute. Like,
Let my
I feel like
adrenaline come down a little bit.
I was like, my adrenaline's, like, through the roof. I feel like my leg's just been smashed between two cars. I was like, I don't even want to try to stand up right now. Just the thought of standing hurts. So I'm sitting there, like, catching my breath. I'm looking, and I'm still looking and looking. I'm like, man, like, I don't even think, like, I've got, like, puncture marks. Like, I don't think he actually broke the skin. Like, it's – and I'm, like, trying to figure out how this all happened or how this, like – it's not worse. And then the guy gets on – they have, like, walkie-talkie. He's like, he's up and running again. So now I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I've put 3 bullets in this thing. We've just had, like, hand-to-hand combat basically on the side of this mountain. And this bear is running again. Like, he's still not done. So now I'm thinking in my head, like, now I've got to go after him again, one-legged basically. So the guide I was with, he's like, hey, I know you probably need some time a little bit. He goes, but as soon as you're ready, like, we'll get back on him as soon as these dogs get him caught, that we can get him, you know, you can get another shot at him. I was like, okay. And, you know, at this point, it's become personal with this bear. Like, this bear is not winning.
Yeah, he's yours. You're going.
Yeah, he's mine. Like, we'll get him at some point. Like, so I go to, like, stand up, and I'm like, all right, like, I have, like, some strength to stand. I tried the whole, like, stand on one leg. I'm like, I mean, it hurts, but it's stable enough. Like, nothing's broke. Like, I don't have, like, a crushed tibia or anything.
Right.
Like, so we're good to go. He's like, are you good? And I was like, yeah, it's going to be slow, but I'm good. Like, let's go. So I strap my rifle back on. I take the trekking pole, and I'm, like, using the trekking pole as my left leg and just trying to track across this mountain with one leg and be super careful. Like, the hardest part was I could not physically, like, trying to pick my leg up. Like, it just wouldn't come up. Like, between pain and just, like, it wasn't working. I don't know if I crushed some of those nerves or whatever, and they were just so, like, didn't want to function with the muscles. So all that goes on, and then so my dad's up there, and he's like, are you good? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm good. He's like, okay. Well, he ends up having to stay up there with the dogs that are still tied up. The other guy's taken off with the bear, and then I'm going with the other guy. So now he's up there by himself with, like, 4 or 5 dogs tied up. He doesn't have a gun. So we're just all chilling, or they're all chilling, and we're taking off across this rough country mountain again. And the dogs would get the bear stopped here and there, and then he'd take off running again. Then the dogs would get him stopped, and we'd take off running. So we came around the side of this mountain and then dropped down into this valley, kind of where this creek was coming through, and then followed that creek up a little bit. And then we got to where the guide he was at, and the dogs had finally got this bear treed, but he's in, like, a mesquite bush. Like, he's not even in a tree. He's still on the ground. He's just in this bush.
Yeah.
And he's just chilling. I mean, he's got 3 holes in him. He's bleeding. He's tired of running. I'm tired of chasing him. And so I get up to him, and I was like, all right, you know, where he's at? And the guide goes, all right, I need you to crawl up this deal about 20 yards, and then as soon as you get up the top of that, just kind of poke up, and you'll see him. He's right there. So now I'm like, okay, you're telling me, who just had, like, this hand-to-hand combat encounter with this bear, that I need you to go climb up and sneak back up on the same bear and get within 15 yards of him again and shoot him.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, got it. So, like, I'm guns loaded. Luckily, I took extra shells with me, so I run 5 more in it. Get up there, and I'm like, all right, I can see him. Like, and it's pretty bushy, a lot of, you know, thick stuff, but I can make him out for the best part. And at this point, don't even care. Like, all I can see is, like, chest and head, so I put one, like, right behind his ear. I think is where I could see he was looking away from me. And as soon as I hit him, he, like, goes mouth wide open, kind of stands up, but, like, you can see blood coming out. And I'm like, all right, he's done. But, like, he's still just standing there, and he's, like, not fallen yet. But I'm like, screw this. I rack another one in, put another one in his chest, and then he falls. So I'm like, okay, we're done. Like, the bear's down finally. So I think all in all, I was 5 rounds in is what he took to, you know, 4 would have done it, but I wasn't taking my chances on this one. Put 1 more extra in him for safe measures. So now we finally get the bear down, and I'm like, all right, my leg is, like, killing me at this point. And now we've got the whole pack out. We got to skin him, quarter him, pack him out and all this. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a long day. And this whole time I'm thinking like, surely my leg will start feeling better, like, or something. And it didn't, at least through that day. But that was the whole, experience of the hunt itself, with that encounter.
So, how far had he gone from the cave to where you finally killed him?
Probably 3/4 of a mile.
Wow. With 3
So
rounds
he
in him.
went, yeah. So he went down the mountain to the creek bottom, back up, and then side hilled for a little while, and then came back down, crossed that same creek again, and came back up the mountain, maybe another 100 feet. I know I was hobbling pretty good, but it took us probably 15 or 20 minutes from the cave to hike back to where we ended up. The dogs had him caught again, and they were doing a whole lot of like stopping and moving and stopping and moving.
Yeah.
About every 150 feet, the dogs would get him stopped, but then he'd take off again. So he wasn't doing a whole lot of really running, but he wasn't stopping to a point where you could just, catch up to him and get a shot on him.
So, what do you attribute, or what was the reason that he didn't puncture any skin when he bit you? Because I mean, anybody I'm sure that's hunted bears before or heard crazy bear hunting stories and stuff, they know that, I don't know, they're wondering right now why he didn't puncture any skin.
So, I think some of it has to do with, he got me like right below the knee, and kind of where that tibia and everything comes out, it's a lot of bone. So it's like a lot of just like skin right on top of bone. You got that like tibial plateau or whatever, and then on the other side you've got those other bones. Like, I mean, when I say it's right below the bend of the knee, it's right below the bend of the knee. So I don't know if the fact that he didn't get any of that like real soft fleshy area, and it was a lot of skin and bone where he kind of just bit into and crushed. I think that's some of it. I'll attribute some of it to, so I'm a big Sitka guy. I wear Sitka gear. People can think whatever they want about that. But Sitka makes mountain pants, and their mountain pants are made with built-in knee pads. And where he bit, literally he wrapped that knee pad and compressed it into my leg. Like, his bite stayed on that knee pad the whole time. So I think that maybe benefited me a little bit. And then the fact of, once we got to him, we're able to look at him. He was an old bear, and his teeth, like his canine teeth, were super worn down. They were flat, rounded off. They didn't have that point to them. So, I mean, it was literally just a flat piece of tooth trying to come together. That's probably why my leg has perfectly round holes where his teeth were instead of actual punctures.
Yeah.
Just because it was basically a compressive force and not really a puncture into.
Yeah. So, how, you say he was an older bear, how big and how old do you estimate he was? Or the guys?
Yeah, so the guys kind of have an estimate. I'll actually know for sure here pretty soon. So the state of Arizona, whenever you kill something, you've got to go check the bear out or check your game out. And they take some DNA, they pull like a small tooth or whatever, send it off, and they'll actually send you a report like the bear was this old and all these kind of things. Okay. So at some point, I think it's supposed to take 6 to 9 months. So I should be getting that back pretty soon. But the guides there said they said that's probably one of the bigger bears that you're going to find in Arizona. They said he's an old boar. That's why he just so, didn't want to die. They probably estimated him at about 15.
Wow.
Which they said for up there is you're not going to find a bigger, better bear in Arizona. I've actually got the skull. He's ready at the taxidermist. I just haven't seen him or gotten it yet to measure it. But going off the taxidermist and, just the size of his head with the guides, they said he should go Boone and Crockett with that. So once I get the official measurements, I'll know, or I get it back so I can officially measure it and everything, I'll know. But I know one of the bears I killed in Manitoba, he was like 1 or 2 inches off of being, I think he had like a 17 or 18 inch skull, and this bear's what blows that bear out of the park as far as size. He's probably, lengthwise, I would say 6.5, 7 feet, 350 pounds or so. I mean, they're not those monstrous,
Oh, yeah.
monstrous bears, but for up there, they said you're not going to find a bigger bear. I mean, his paws, like I said, I've got those pictures. I mean, his front paws and pads and everything, they were huge. His back feet were huge. His head was huge. His mouth and his teeth were huge. You know.
Yeah.
We got an up close and personal visit a few times, but
Wow, that's crazy, man. So the you briefly mentioned like the pack out, and after you shot, you're thinking, oh man, now we gotta, this is gonna be a long day. You know, now we gotta do all this other stuff. Um, at that point, how did the leg hold up for the rest of all that, and where was your mind at? You know, as it began to calm down a little bit after the bear was down.
yeah. So at this point, 30 minutes after we've taken some pictures, stuff like that, like the adrenaline rush is gone. And so if I would like sit still, I'd be all right. Like if it would just sit there, like it'd be throbbing. And it actually kind of had like this burning to it. Cause when his mouth was, when he punctured or when he, bit, that just hurt from like compression. But then when his mouth slid off, it was almost like an abrasive or like an abrasion.
Yeah.
So that part kind of like stung or whatever. But if I would was sitting there doing something, like it wasn't too bad, but it would get stiff. So then like when I'd go to try to stand up, I'd almost have to like work it out a little bit to try and make it not so bad. And again, it was one of those, if I like almost just drug my leg behind me and like didn't pick it up, I was kind of all right. Like it still hurt, but it was the trying to lift my leg, like to take a step, like that lifting motion of trying to step just wasn't working and hurt. And so now we're trying to hike out of rocks,
Yeah.
where you can't just drag your foot. So it was an experience. I was definitely the slowest person on the entire convoy out. I was like, I'll make it back when I get there, but I'll get there. Just wait for me and don't leave me out here.
Yeah.
I'll get there when I get there, kind of thing. But the guys, they were super good, super helpful. I mean, obviously they did they skinned it out and then started doing the quartering out part, and they carried most. I actually don't even think I ended up carrying anything out. My task was just managing to walk.
Yeah. Just physically leave.
Yeah, so that wasn't bad. The walking out, I mean, it took a little while, but it definitely wasn't as bad as it could have been. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I felt like the more that I walked, the more like kind of like loosened some of that stuff up a little bit. Obviously, like, an hour into it, my leg was like bruised from my knee to my ankle. Like all that stuff was it was already swollen and, yellow and purple and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But it, after that day went on and I started, taking 800 milligrams of ibuprofen in the morning and in the afternoon, and that seemed to help pretty well. So 1,600 milligrams of ibuprofen, which probably isn't recommended, did me pretty well for the next few days, especially, getting back out there. And they were like, well, are you still good to hunt? And I was like, it's day one. Of course I'm still good to hunt. Like, I'll be fine. Just don't anticipate me being super fast.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Was you killed on day one, and you still got two other guys in camp, your dad being one, that are trying to kill something, and kind of how you felt after that, and what your role was for the remainder of the trip.
Yeah, well, so I technically was still hunting because I had killed a bear, but if we caught a lion, we were going on the lion. I had a lion
Gotcha.
tag too.
Okay.
So the way we had it was the two guys on the UTVs, which was my guide and my dad. Those guys, they do bear and lion. Their dogs can go back and forth. They run both of them. Well, then the other guide, he does lion only. He's horseback lion only. So we had kind of discussed, well, I would swap out with the guy on the UTV and I'd go horseback and strictly focus on lions. And then Jody would come over and get with the bear and lion guy. That way they could figure out,
Yeah.
he had a chance at either or. Well, day two of having this incident, I was in no way, shape, or form going to try and ride a horse, not being able to use my left leg.
Yeah.
And Jody wanted to stay with him anyways. They had, got on a few old scents, stuff like that. So he stayed with that guide for that day, staying on lions. So I actually got back with my guide. And for like the next 2 days, we really never cut anything. We cut a few small tracks, but nothing really worth even sending the dogs on. Didn't get any lions. But even getting in and out of the UTV, like I would physically have to take my hand and lift my left leg up, put it in the UTV, and then I could get in, just because
Wow.
I couldn't get my leg to lift up. And that was the most frustrating part is, yeah, it hurt. And it hurt trying to lift it, but just like the thinking like I need to lift my leg, but like it's not lifting. So then I'm thinking like, man, there may be something like more seriously wrong here. Like, but of course I was like, I'll look at it when I get back home. Like I'm not worried about it right now.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
yeah, it's kind of that balance. Like you're concerned about it, but at the same time, it's day one of a hunt, and you're over 20 miles back with no cell service. It's yeah,
yeah,
it's kind of a rough spot.
it was. Everyone asked, they're like, well, did you not go to a doctor? Like bears are full of bacteria and all this stuff, and you need shots and all that. I was like, it didn't even penetrate my skin. Like I didn't have any blood. Like I've got like maybe some small abrasions, but like I'm not talking about like teeth sunken into like flesh and the bloodstream. Like I think I'm all right. They're like, and everyone's like, no, you need to go to a doctor. And I was like, well, I'll see what it's like when I get home. And then by the time I get home, it's like, if nothing's infected me yet, I think I'll be all right.
So what unfolded for the remainder of the trip with as far as the other two in camp and their hunting efforts?
Yeah. Well, Jody probably will never ride horseback again. Um, but he had a good experience on that. So I was with my guide for the next 2 days. We went around, didn't really cut anything. So day 2 and 3 were kind of like a lull. They were a little warmer, so we obviously weren't able to run the dogs as long. But we come back to camp day 3, and Jody and them were already back on the horses. And usually we had been beating them back quite a bit. So I was like, oh, they must have had some success. Go see, he was on a white horse and it's got blood all over it. I was like, oh yeah, they had some success. So he ended up shooting a lion with like on horseback that day. They actually rode into a place, and they were like an hour, 2 hours into their ride, and a guy. So they can talk on their in reaches, their or whatever they'll do satellite messaging or whatever. Well, a guy that knew that Jody's guide was out there looking for lions. They were out there mule deer hunting, glassing for mule deer, and he actually messaged him and said, "Hey, we've spotted a lion over here on this side of this mountain. I knew you were out hunting for lions." So they actually rode out like fairly quickly and then rode back to where this guy was, and the dogs got on that lion. They got it treed, and so Jody shot that one. It was a good lion. It's a female, but it's a good size. You know, first lion for anybody was great, and he was super happy with it.
Yeah.
So at this point, like, my dad's in this whole like, both of y'all have killed. I haven't killed anything. Like, we got 2 days left of the hunt. And I was like, just be patient. Like, so the next morning, so that day I swap. So Jody had then shot a lion. So now I swap with Jody and I go on horseback, and he comes with the UTV. So like by day 3, my leg's feeling, decent. I can now bend it a little bit. I mean, it's still sore, but I'm feeling pretty confident, riding horse. And I thought I would be all right. And it wasn't terrible. I was definitely nice and sore after. I took a handful of ibuprofen with me just in case it got bad. So Jody started riding with the UTV guy, and then I went horseback for lions, and my dad was still, looking for lions or bears. So on day 4, I guess they went back to that kill that they had covered back up, and it had been completely uncovered, drug around, whatever. They said put the dogs back on it, had a fresh track, and so those dogs got on it. And then the other guide, which was the guide I had, came with them. They turned their dogs out on it. And I think they went like a mile and a half, maybe 45 minutes. And then they got that lion treed. And my dad was able to take that one, another real good sized female lion. But yeah, they had a great time with that hunt. They were back super early. Me and my guide, we rode probably 10 miles horseback, went up and over 7, 8 different mountains. I kind of attribute that to, you're on like a adventure trail ride, just seeing the nice country, just riding through the, mountains and everything, just taking it all in while you're hunting. You're just letting the dogs run around, and you're kind of just waiting for them to come across something and open up. Other than that, riding the horses, you're just kind of on a trail ride until the dogs catch on something.
Yeah.
So for my last 2 days, we never came across anything, fresh. We hit a couple tracks that were 2 or 3 days old, but nothing that the dogs could really line out and follow. So for me, I mean, it was a great time riding through the mountains, but we didn't have any more success. Day 5, actually. So my dad, Jody, had killed a lion. I'd killed the bear. And day 5, my dad and his guide actually got on another bear. They came across a real big track coming across the road, got the dogs on them. Dogs took off. The other guide came, and they ended up turning their dogs out on us. So he had like 16 dogs on this bear, and I think they trailed him for 3 hours.
Wow.
The dogs had run upwards of 10 or 12 miles, and it finally, that bear just ran the dogs out. The guides got to him a few times where you could just, like, they were able to see him. They say it's a real big, mature boar. But he would get in like a cave, but he'd get in a cave that had 2 ways in, 2 ways out. So he'd go in the front and it'd come out the back, and the dogs would get it back on him, and he just would never stop. So finally it just got to the point the dogs were, just laying out because they'd run so hard and fast that they were overheating and getting tired. And that bear just ran them till they couldn't run anymore, and he ended up outrunning them. So he was the only one who had the chance or the shot at, getting the lion and bear. But at the end of the day, we were all super stoked, super happy to get that done. I was glad that that kind of played out the way it did. Both my dad and Jody, they both shot black bears in Canada with us, so it was cool to see them get the lions. I know I've got plenty of time, hopefully to get back out, go shoot me a lion also. I kind of, not because of the whole bear incident that I had, but that kind of tied me off on bears. It's my 3rd bear. And my goal was kind of, I wanted to shoot a good mature bear, and then I really have wanted to shoot a color phase bear. And so this one ended up being a real old mature bear, and he's a cinnamon color. So he's kind of checks both those boxes of being a color phased mature boar. Really not much more I'm looking for a bear. So I probably capped off, end on a high note on my bear adventures, move on to another animal. I'll, try and do the lion. I know my dad wants to shoot a bear. So we may go back and strictly, stay, he do bear, I do lion kind of thing. But it was a great trip. I tell everybody, trip of a lifetime. Obviously the stories and the memories from it probably won't ever be beat, but just being back there, being in the country, seeing the dogs work, that's probably one of the most amazing things, watching those dogs, and then watching the guides with the dogs. I mean, those dogs could be a mile off, and just listening to them, they know which dog's barking. They know, they know so much about those dogs. It's crazy to see. If you've never been hunting behind dogs with houndsmen that, really care about their dogs but are really good with their dogs, it's a whole nother level. It's great.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I got one question about the dogs, because you've talked multiple times about how, they would find a track and take off, and the hunt begins, basically. Do the guides have any insight, and I'm complete novice asking this question, the guides have any insight into when the dogs take off on kind of how big of an animal they might be going after, or is it just kind of what you end up with is what you get in that scenario?
So as far as the bears, so I know whenever the dogs would take off, the guides would get out and they would try and go find the track that the dogs are getting the scent off of. That way they could have an idea of, one, to make sure the dogs are going in the right direction, because the dogs can catch the smell, but they can't catch direction.
Yeah.
So if he sees the direction the track's going, but the dogs hit on it but went the other way, he'll try and he'll call them back and get them turned the other way so that they're not backtracking it, they're following it forward. So usually off the back pad or the front pad, he can get an idea on the bears on size. Like I said, we hit, the dogs actually alerted on one bear around a tank, I think on like our day 2. And then he loaded them up. We went and walked around, and he actually found the track that they were probably alerting on. But he's like, man, it's pretty small. It's a juvenile bear. Like it's not worth. He's like, I mean, if you're just wanting any size bear, like you could go after it. But he said it's really not a bear you're gonna want to be on.
Yeah.
So as far as the size of the track, they have a pretty good idea of what size bear you're gonna get. The lions, I would assume, is kind of similar. They can just kind of tell off the size of the track what it's gonna be. Um, and then it's kind of one of those deals. Like if you get up to it and you're like, yeah, that's not really what I want. Like they'll call the dogs off and you'll pull out and just let it go. They just said if you do, the more times they do that, it's harder because those animals start learning how to work those dogs and stuff like that. They said usually the lions aren't as good. He said the lions are easier to tree because most people who tree a lion, they're shooting it regardless. Just because they're, harder to find and stuff like that. He goes, but bears, he goes, there's a lot of people who'll run dogs and it'll be a young cub or something like that, and they'll get it treed. Well, then they'll let it go. Well, then now that treed cub now learns. So that turns them into older bears that kind of know how to work the dogs. They just know if I just keep running and never stop, eventually these dogs will stop chasing me.
Yeah.
So they kind of get, used to that being trailed. So he definitely said it's a lot easier to tree and get a cat stopped than it is a bear. And obviously it showed, the 2 cats that they got treed fairly quick in a tree. And then the 2 bears we got after did not tree very quickly, or one didn't at all. And they're just a lot more, tough, I guess, to just keeping at it and trying to stay alive.
Yeah. Gotcha. So roughly 4 months after this hunt, how's the leg doing?
It's doing good. I've still got a gnarly scars that I'll probably stay with me forever. But as far as, I got full function. I actually came back like a week and a half, or like the 2 days after I got home. I actually worked out on it, ran and did some weightlifting. Like it was definitely sore, and there were certain movements I pushed probably a little too far on that line, but it wasn't too bad. I was like, actually, when I first got home, I went and got an X-ray just to make sure I didn't have like a stress fracture or anything. That all came back clear. So, but yeah, going now, everything's good. And the only thing is like where the bite marks were or are, that like skin above it, like I still don't have really much sensation in it. I don't know if it just really damaged those nerves real, but it almost just feels numb. Like I can touch on it and everything, but there's really not a whole lot of sensation there. Just you can feel that pressure. But other than that, everything's pretty good. I'd say I'm pretty lucky that nothing major went on. I'll take a couple bite marks and some loss of sensation right above them.
Oh yeah, could have been much worse for sure.
Oh yeah.
What was your dad's thoughts on the whole event? Because I mean, you briefly mentioned it, but he was right there next to you the whole time everything went down.
Yeah. He at first he was like, obviously he was doing the whole like check and make sure I was good. I think he was more worried about what my mom was going to say whenever she found out. So we made a deal when we were there. He was like, all right, hey, so this is day 1 of the hunt. Like, mom doesn't find out about this till we get home. I was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like, it won't get brought up. Like, that's why like I didn't post anything about shooting the bear, nothing. Like, she knew I killed one and that was it. And then because we both knew, like, if she found out about this day 1, like, we were done. Like, the hunt would be over right then. Like, there's no 4 more days of hunting. So we were like, we'll just play this out. Everything's good now. It happened, but, no harm, no foul. So then I was under the impression we were waiting till we got home to tell her. Well, Friday after the last hunt, he tells her. And I'm like, this isn't what we talked about, which hindsight, now he was, it's a 2-day drive home. So he was just kind of prefacing it that way. So she wasn't as mad about it by the time we got home.
Yeah. So she had a little time to calm down about it.
She had a little time to like cool back off. But, yeah.
Wow.
I think it was one of those deals. Like it all happened so fast, and he wasn't there. Like he was kind of behind that rock ledge, and I think he kind of watched some of it, as I shot. But then it was just like trying to duck out of the way, and then I don't know. It all happened so fast, and there was so many moving pieces and parts. Like I wish I had like a chest-mounted GoPro. Honestly, that'd have been the one thing that like that way I could go back and watch it unfold. Just because I have a pretty good idea. Like I can remember how it happened, everything like that, but I just like to see it again. And then I also see how long it actually played out for, because I feel like that whole thing took like 5 or 10 seconds.
Yeah, no, it's
Maybe it
crazy.
was 2 seconds, you know?
It's crazy what how your mind slows things down in moments like that. Like I know I had a couple moments this past season in various instances like that where, just a matter of seconds, my brain just slowed it down so much that it felt like I saw in the moment I saw everything happening like and had time to think about certain things that I saw when it was just in a narrow few second window. It's crazy how our brains
Yeah,
do
like
that.
in my mind, I'm pretty sure the bear like was latched onto my leg for like 5 seconds. It wasn't like a bite and let go, but it could have only been like 1 or 2 seconds. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know it was long enough for it to happen, his body to roll. I looked down, it was still there, and have the idea in my head on how am I going to get this bear off my leg?
Yeah.
And then he
Wow.
let go or slid off, whatever happened.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
But
Well, obviously, glad that you're okay. Like we said, could have been a whole lot worse. And one heck of an experience that I'm happy you came on here and shared with us. Is awesome story and one of those things you can't make it up, man.
man, for sure, that's it. So many people are like, "No, that didn't happen." I was like, "I mean, I've got the scars to show you. Like, it actually happened." They're like, there's no way." I was like, "Man, there's too many details to make that story up." Like, and then finally, people are like, "All right, well, like, I've never heard that happen." I was like, "Yeah, well, I hadn't either until October 6th, and
Yeah.
it happened."
What the guides think of it all? Like, had they had any close calls or anything like that happen previously, or were they shocked by it
And
too?
they were pretty shocked by it. They all, I mean, after it all happened, and everything's like, all right, everyone's good. Like, they thought it was super cool, whatever. And they were cool, and it was just one of those deals. Like, you kind of had to be there. Like,
Yeah.
them two were there, and it was one of those deals. Like, no way. Like, there's no way that happened. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those experiences where there's no good way to like put it into perspective. Like, it was one of the, you had to be there.
Yeah.
Like, you had to have been on the side of that mountain watching it all go down. Like, it was just a crazy experience. All that unfolding. The dogs are going crazy. The dogs are barking. The bear's rolling down. I'm trying to get him off of me. The other dogs are chasing after him. I mean, there was just so much going on at once.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you're a bear camp legend now. That guy's gonna tell everybody, hey, the last guy I had out here, man, he almost got his leg bit off,
That's funny. My guide, the week later, he sends me a video of the other hunters that they had, and he shot this bear, and I replied to it. It was a bear that they had treated. I was like, man, that's nice. That bear's in a tree. He shot him once. He fell down, and he died. Like, crazy, but that's how that's supposed to happen.
Yeah. Why couldn't I have that?
So, I gave my dad a hard time. So I had a 44 mag that I was using, and he took a 45-70. And the whole time before we went up there, I was giving him like so much crap about like, why are you taking such a big gun? Like, you're not going to need it. Like, they said like a 357, 44 mag, like 45-70 if you feel like you need it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, if I ever go bear hunting again, I'll make sure to take 45-70 or something to make sure it's just like a one-time thing. I'm not going to try and play how many bullets can I put in you before you die.
Yeah. I almost forgot I was gonna ask because you mentioned you had a lever action and kind of what the setup was, but what gun were you shooting?
Yeah, so I was shooting it's a Citadel 44 mag on like a cowboy tactical French. So it's lightweight, skeletonized aluminum Vortex holographic sight. I think I was shooting like 240 grain, maybe 180 grain or 240 grain 44 mag shells. And,
Gotcha.
it even says on the box, bear and whatever load. Well, that's false.
Man,
false advertisement.
That's crazy. I mean, not just the number of rounds that you put in them. I know they're tough animals, but I mean, you talked about the shot you put in him where he didn't even flinch. That's insane.
Yeah, like the first shot I put, like I hit, he flinches, runs around in the cave, moves. I'm like, all right, the next one, there was so little reaction. I was like, did I miss? Like, did I miss this bear from 10 feet? But then after, it's like, no, like I've got video of him when after our whole deal and he's running or trying to run still. Like, there's blood pouring out of his neck. There's blood coming out of his side. He's bleeding everywhere. He's just still running.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up the podcast episode, um, I have a couple of questions I do like to ask all of our first time guests that we have on the show. The first one being, what is one of your favorite hunting memories to date? And tell us a little bit about it. It may be the one that we spent the last hour talking about, for all I know, but if it's not, or if there's another one that sticks out in your mind, we'd love to hear about it.
Oh, let's see. That one's pretty close. Obviously, just because of what went down.
Yeah.
Um, let's see here. Honestly, some of my fondest memories of the hunting stuff. I think one of my best ones is going to Wisconsin. Me and my dad up there. We've kind of become pretty good friends with the guys who run the outfit up there. And I think a lot of people, where the memories and stuff come from hunting, it's actually not the hunt itself. I mean, the hunt itself's great, but it's the hanging out at camp, around the campfire talks. It's the, after the kill, high fives and hugs and sharing those memories and stuff that's like real special with the people you enjoy spending the time in the outdoors with. You just see, you feel it a lot more. You get the satisfaction and the adrenaline from the kill and all that, but I think a lot of people take for granted the camaraderie and the stuff of actually being in camp with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say, going up there with my dad, doing that stuff in Wisconsin is probably one of my most memorable hunts, especially the first time we went up there. Even this last time, I'm very fortunate to share this passion with him. More so probably because he's the one who got me into it.
Yeah.
But man, we go on a lot of really cool hunts together, and I know there's a lot of people that aren't as fortunate to be able to do that, and I try not to take it for granted because it is something that we get to do together that we both love and enjoy, and get to have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
Go and see a lot of cool area and hunt a lot of really cool animals.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I've at least seen the pictures that what y'all have come back with from Wisconsin. It's pretty awesome. Looks like an awesome time. Good bucks.
Oh yeah.
The last question I got for you, and I know at the beginning of our podcast you mentioned the mule deer and the elk hunts that you're hoping to get on here in the near future, but what's the bucket list look like? What's at the top of the bucket list, or the top few that would be those once in a lifetime experiences for you?
Well, I think this New Zealand trip's going to be a once in a lifetime experience. Obviously, elk, mule deer, those are some animals that I really want to get, but I don't know that those are once in a lifetime. I could probably see myself doing that a few times.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to shoot a red stag, but I was like, if I'm going to shoot one, I'm not going to shoot one in Texas. I'm going to go to New Zealand, shoot a good one over there. That'll be another really fun trip. Just the experience being over there. They do a lot of, it's, just look super nice area, all that. And then just the animals over there are magnificent. If I won the lottery and, could afford it, I'd love to go to like Alaska or somewhere, go on like a caribou or moose hunt. That's like a bucket list hunt, but
yeah,
I'm not holding my breath on that. I could probably live without a moose or a caribou.
Yeah, that's a caribou for me is that top once in a lifetime. Like if I can just, I don't care how many years away it might be or how soon it might be. If I do that once, that's it. So yeah, I hear you on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd like to go to Africa at some point, but I've got a lot of bucket list items that I would like to go to, but it's all just we'll see where things go. I have told my dad, I was like, all right, this is 3 times we've been bear hunting. Like, I got a lot of animals I want to shoot. We're gonna have to transition to something else, start incorporating other animals to this list.
No, I get that. That was what led to my mule deer this last year, was just I kept putting in for pronghorn year after year after year because I had a great experience. I love the hunt, and I still would like to do it again. But this last year was like, all right, let's change it up. Let's start doing some other stuff that we haven't done before, and that's kind of my plan moving forward, at least as well. So
yeah, that's kind of what I started doing. It's just like, well, I've put in and I've put in. For the most part, I was just putting in for preference points, just because I was like, well, even if I drew, like I don't know if I'd be able to go. Now I'm like, well, let's see if if I don't draw, I'll get more points. If I do, then I'll go give it a shot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, thank you again for coming on the show and sharing this experience. Incredible story.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. It'll probably save me a few more stories. Just like, hey, here, go watch this podcast.
Yeah, just go listen to the podcast. I'm tired of telling
you won't even have to get this short. Like, I've gotten pretty good at getting this thing down to like a shortened down version. Like, I could probably tell the story to like the random person in like a minute and a half. I've just got like, I'll hit the high points real quick.
Yeah, no, I remember. I mean, obviously you've told me before, but I enjoy getting to hear the longer, detailed version. A lot of stuff in there that I hadn't heard before, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But well, thanks again, man. For our listeners, thank you all for tuning in to another Fall Obsession podcast. Be sure you follow and subscribe to our Fall Obsession pages on social media, as well as whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. We drop weekly new episodes. And on that note, I'll see you guys again next week for another Fall Obsession podcast. Catch you then.